fundraising too, or do you do a little
No,
bit of that?
no. I did have the opportunity to do a little bit of fundraising yesterday at Martha's Vineyard. I thought I was going to get a full night, a day and a night, and ended up instead coming here to be on the radio and on TV.
Well, it's very
and I'm
kind
on my
of
way to New Hampshire.
you. know, I have bad
By the
news.
way, it's a beautiful day here.
It is a beautiful day. It's a beautiful place, too. There's the bad news and good news for you this morning. The bad news is Governor Dukakis, with whom you clearly have a warm relationship, told us he is a supporter of Elizabeth Warren's. The good news for you is he said the one position she had that he was uncomfortable with was elimination of private insurance in her Medicare plan. You have a proposal, Medicare X, which is very much like what Governor Dukakis was describing. Can you describe it to us?
Sure. It's called Medicare X. It's a true public option. It would be administered by Medicare, and it would be made available to everybody in America. You could make a decision whether you wanted to stay on your private insurance if you had private insurance, or go on a public plan if you wanted a public plan. And I think that's where the vast majority of the American people are on this issue of universal health care. Elizabeth's plan, in Bernie's plan, Bernie said, he said, I wrote the damn bill, and so Bernie is the guy who accurately describes it. It's a bill that makes illegal all private insurance except for what he calls cosmetic insurance, which is insurance for plastic surgery, and taxes the American people to the tune of $33 trillion. To give you a sense of perspective about how much that is equivalent to 70% of the revenue, the entire scope of revenue we will collect over the next 10 years. So Bernie thinks we're going to be willing to pay another 70% of taxes to support his single-payer plan. I don't think there's any way the American people will agree with
Senator,
that.
I've read you and heard you say things like, and I'm paraphrasing, but close, that those who are supporting a Sanders Warren Medicare for All with the elimination of private insurance are walking off a cliff. Does that translate into you believe those who endorse that plan are unelectable in 2020?
Well, I think that they are, unless they come to their senses on this issue. I think it'd be very challenging to be elected in any state advocating this plan, much less swing states like Iowa or Colorado. I mean, Vermont tried this. There are many ways to think of Vermont as being a perfect place for a universal health care system. It's on the border of Canada. It's not a big state. Bernie is from the state. There are a lot of people that support single payer, and they passed it through the legislature. But when they discovered how much it was going to actually cost and what the taxes were that they would have to pay, Governor Sunland said, we just can't do that. And they couldn't do it. And it couldn't get through in California. It couldn't get through in Colorado. So I think my plan is a better plan on the substance, but I think the politics are better too.
We're talking to Senator Michael Bennet from Colorado, candidate for the Democratic nomination for president.
So your fellow Coloradan Governor Hickenlooper is dropped out of the race, and Biden seems, as the front runner, he seems a little bit in trouble. Does this give an opening for you in any way in the race?
Well, I think that there is an opening for somebody of the next generation who is not pulled over ideologically the same way that Bernie is. And this is we've still got a long race ahead of us. You know, I talked to Mike Dukakis the other day about this. By the way, we do know each other really well.
Oh, he said that.
How do you guys
know
each other?
Because his daughter, Andrea Dukakis, and her husband, John Hereford, are among our closest friends in Denver. And my kids and their kids literally grew up together.
Oh, wow.
And I see Mike and Kitty, several times a year. By the way, that's not the only recipe he'll impose on you. There are others. But I think, I'm not as well known as the other candidates. My poll numbers obviously are quite low. But as I travel New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina and Nevada, my sense is that Democrats are basically where I am, and they would like universal health care, but they don't want the Medicare for all. And on issue after issue, I think they're less ideological than some of our candidates are.
If you don't make the debate stage for September, and right now it appears you're at risk, you only have, 10, 12 days, is your campaign cooked? Can you not be on the stage and continue as a candidate?
I think I can. I think there's been a little bit too much focus put on these debates. The American people can't discern almost anything about these candidates based on them standing on a stage for 4 or 5 minutes. You can figure some stuff out. You can figure out whether somebody could be able to stand up there next to Donald Trump, and there's probably value in that. But there's a much richer conversation going on in these early states where people haven't made up their minds yet, by and large. And this was a time, I mean, your own John Kerry, I think, was at 4% in the polls right now and went on to win the Iowa caucuses. Barack Obama was at 4% or even less than that in the polls right now. So this has some time to play out.
You know, one last thing about Governor Hickenlooper. I don't read the Washington Examiner every day. I cannot tell a lie, but I did see an article this morning saying that you had a little car ride with him, and he notified you that he was dropping out of the race and at least contemplating running for Senator Gardner, Republican Senator Gardner's seat in Colorado. Did he give you any indication as to whether or not he was going to enter that race?
He didn't tell me that he was going to enter the race, and he also didn't tell me that he was dropping out of the presidential
Oh, is that
race.
so? I'm sorry.
The conversation that we did have was that, you know, he wanted to know what it was like being in the Senate. And
what did you say to him?
Well, I was honest about it. On the one hand, there's a lot not to like because the place is completely broken. Mitch McConnell has broken it. It was broken before Donald Trump arrived. Citizens United has broken it. I mean, you can go down a list of things. But I said to him, look, any American with the privilege to be able to serve there and try to fix it, I think has an obligation to try to serve there and try to fix it. Just like every single one of us at this moment in the history of our democracy, the history of this republic, has a responsibility to step up as a citizen and assert control over this exercise in self-government. Donald Trump ran for president saying, I alone can fix it. That's about the least American thing that somebody running for the presidency could say. And the challenge to all of us is, are we going to step up and reaffirm our commitment to this exercise in self-government or not? I think that's what's at stake. I really do. I think the democracy is at stake. The work you guys do is more important now than it's ever been. And I think, and I was saying that to John about, you know, the work in the Senate, that too many of us are there to screw around over this partisan stuff that kind of plays its way out on the cable television at night. But we're not actually addressing any of the problems that, you know, like the kids I used to work for in the Denver Public Schools.
You were the superintendent, we should say, for those who don't know.
Yeah, when I was their superintendent, you know, what the kids there, most of whom live in poverty, and their families face. And right now in America, they face a situation where no matter how hard they work, they can't get out of poverty. And no matter how hard the people that come to my town halls work, they say to me, Michael, I can't afford some combination of housing, health care, higher education, and early childhood education. We are stuck. And I think the question before us is whether we have the capacity and the guts to be able to end this gilded age that we're living in right now, the way Teddy Roosevelt and that generation of Americans had the guts to end that gilded age.
I think there's another question that you know, watching these Democratic debates, and you sit on your couch and you say that's a great idea, maybe that's not as good. What I always leave with is Mitch McConnell, it seems to me, pretty much runs the country. We know what happened with Merrick Garland. We saw, I don't know if you saw the brilliant Frontline piece about his commitment the day that Bork was borked, as they say, that the Supreme Court was going to be his focus. He doesn't take up guns, doesn't take up anything. Medicare X, for example. Let's assume it's the perfect idea. How do you get anything done? You're president of the United States. You have a Democratic House. You have a Republican Senate run by Mitch McConnell. Nice ideas are nice, but outcomes are much nicer. How do you get anything done in this country?
So I'm not sure he does run the country in the sense that I don't know if he can go buy Greenland like President Trump says he's going to do.
It's not for sale, by the way.
I don't know, but man, what a great deal maker that guy is. But he's certainly blockading our country. He has immobilized our exercise in self-government. He and the so-called Freedom Caucus.
So how to get around the blockade?
And you have to go to America. You can't fix Washington in Washington. If I were elected president, I would spend half my time in places where I will never win more than 30% of the vote, doing what I can to try to stitch us back together again, to close over McConnell and to close over the Freedom Caucus. That is the only way we're going to do it. And we have to do it, by the way. People say to me, like, you know, it's really urgent for us to do something on climate change, which I agree with. That's an urgent problem we have to address. We have a climate denier in the White House, and McConnell doesn't care about it. But the thing is, it's not just that we have to act urgently, it's that we have to create a durable solution, because you can't solve climate change 2 years at a time, right? And we've accepted a politics where one group of people comes in, they put their stuff in there for 2 years, another group comes in, they rip it out, another group comes in, they put it in and rip it out. If we're going to accept Mitch McConnell's version of democracy, we're going to have to accept the idea that we're going to get nothing done. We're not going to get climate done. We're not going to get health care done. We're not going to have an economy again that when it rises, everybody benefits. And I don't accept that. I don't accept it. I think we have to restore it. And just like during that progressive era I mentioned earlier, we have to reform the system. Those guys, they passed amendment after amendment to the Constitution. Not all good. Prohibition was one. But women got the right to vote as a result of what women did at that time. And we've got to do things like overturn Citizens United, with a constitutional amendment.
Can I say two last things from me, Senator? We're talking to Michael Bennet, Senator from Colorado, who's running for the Democratic nomination for president. Guns matter a lot to people in this country, particularly Democratic primary voters. I looked up this morning. You have a C+ from the NRA, and I looked, and it said you voted against an assault weapons ban amendment in 2013. I can't think of anything that could be more important for Congress to pass and a president to sign than a ban on these weapons that were used in Gilroy and Dayton and El Paso. Why do you have a C+, and why did you vote against that?
I think actually I have a much lower rating today than I did when that was written. And in every single race that I've run, I've had to overcome the NRA. They've opposed me in every single election that I've had. That was a 25-year-old, basically a 25-year-old assault weapon ban. It was something that I thought the gun manufacturers would be easily able to structure around, and it didn't anticipate new forms of weapons. I've said I would support an assault weapons ban, a modern assault weapons ban. But the more important point I think I would make is Columbine happened 20 years ago. That was a school shooting in Colorado. My oldest daughter is 19. We got 3 kids, those kids that are growing up with the Dukakis grandchildren. And they have, like so many kids in America, grown up over the last 20 years with the knowledge that they could get blown away in school or on their way to school, and that the government has done nothing to protect them, literally nothing. And this is another one where I think McConnell and the NRA have been really strategic in preventing stuff from happening, but we have been non-strategic. So to me, the focus should be on the background checks. In Colorado, we pass background checks after Columbine, and every year 2 or 3% of the people that try to buy a gun in Colorado are denied a gun because they're murderers and rapists and domestic abusers and people that shouldn't have a weapon. We could have been doing that nationally for 20 years, but we haven't been focused on it. And today, I think the difference now is that we've got Moms Against Gun Violence that have organized the way they've organized. You got the Parkland kids organized the way they've been organized. And what they deserve to have is a group of politicians in Washington that are as strategic as they are powerful. And if we focus on this ban, I think we can get it passed. And then we can talk about what else we should be doing.
I mean, it's actually remarkable that after Parkland, we thought that we'd get more gun control. We didn't. And then now we have El Paso and Dayton.
It's amazing.
So why, I don't see Washington breaking through the logjam. Is it really different this time?
It requires both the outside game. So like when I was saying earlier that we all have to step up and save this democracy, that's what Moms Against Gun Violence are doing. That's what the kids from Parkland are doing. That's what it looks like to organize, to be a citizen, to make a difference. Then you need, out of the elected officials in this country, a strategic approach that can actually mobilize the American people again and gain support. And I think we can do it. And I think we can do it on background checks. And if McConnell refuses to do it, and I can tell you this, he's not doing it because he's busy putting election protection legislation on the floor, because he's not doing that either, even though the Russians hacked our election. If McConnell doesn't do it, we got to make these guys pay at the ballot box in November. That's how our system works. It's not about crossing your fingers and hoping. It's about doing the work that the moms and the kids are doing.
So we only have 30 seconds left. This may be the most important question. Is somebody related to you as president of National Public Radio once?
There was. My father.
Okay, so let's get down to it.
Yeah.
Now, while we don't get most of our money from the government, as you know, even though the public
Yeah.
doesn't think, what kind of increase can we count on from President Bennett?
Oh, I will quadruple.
That's it. Done.
I
We
will
are done.
quadruple it.
Let's hear it for Senator Bennett.
Thank
Senator,
you.
we really
You
appreciate
won't
it.
believe it.
Senator, it's a pleasure to
Thanks
meet you.
for having
Thanks so
me.
much for your
Colorado
time.
Senator Michael Bennet is running for president on the Democratic ticket. His new book is Dividing America, How Russia Hacked Social Media and Democracy. To learn more about his campaign, go to michaelbennet.com. Senator Bennet, thank you for joining us. Up next is Emily Rooney. She's here for a famous list of fixations and fulminations. That conversation is next on 89 WGBH Boston Public Radio, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library.